Now let's check here where they gave you the coordinates of A, which is -5 and y, and the coordinates of Q, which is -2 and 5, and they gave you the distance, which is 5. So here when you calculate the distance, obviously you do have the distance. You will take -5 and minus -2 from it and square the answer, plus y minus 5, which is simply the y coordinate of Q, which is 5, right? And when you simplify the left hand side, obviously you will have 5 because the distance is 5. For you to get rid of the square root, you will simply square both sides. On the right hand side, you'll be left with 9 plus y minus 5 squared, and then transpose 9 to the other side. You'll have 16, and then just find the square root of 16, which is simply plus or minus 4. And then all you have to do from there is simply to transpose that minus 5 to the other side, and you will have y is equals to 5 plus 4, which is the positive part, or y is equals to 5 minus 4, which is the negative part. Therefore, you'll have these two y values. Please try that and look at the video for the answer. Try that and look at the video for the answer. Now, finding the midpoint. Midpoint is simply the point that lies halfway through the line. The midpoint is simply a point that is in the middle of two endpoints. For instance, this is the formula that you have to use. Guys, you have to know your formulas, okay? This is the formula that you have to use when you calculate the midpoint. It's simply x2 plus x1 divided by 2, y2 plus y1 divided by 2. Now, for calculating the midpoint here, I will simply say 2 plus 4 divided by 2 and 6 plus 4 divided by 2, and that will give me my midpoint, which is 3 and 5. That is the midpoint of AB. Similarly, here I'll take -1 plus 2 divided by 2, and then I'll take 3 plus -3, which will simply give me 0, and I'm going to divide that by 2. What if we have something like this? This is where, guys, everything started, where I said to you, you have the midpoint, and they told you that the midpoint, that C is the midpoint of A, and you don't have the coordinates of A, but you do have the coordinates of B. You will continue finding the midpoint of AB like you normally do. You will say the midpoint of AB is simply 5 plus x, you divide that by 2, and the y coordinate will be y plus 1, you divide that by 2. However, we do know what x plus 5 divided by 2 is. We know that it should be equal to 8. And we also know that y plus 1 divided by 2 should be equal to 1. So I'm going to take those and equate them to their values and just solve for x and y from there. Hence, we have x is equals to 11 and y is equals to 1. Now, this is a parallelogram. You need to remember the diagonals of parallelogram bisect, meaning that they will have a common midpoint. So basically, I can simply find the coordinate of A by finding the midpoint of, the coordinates of M by finding the midpoint of AC, or simply by finding the midpoint of DB. So if I find the midpoint of DB, I will still get the coordinates of M. And if I try to find the midpoint of AC, I will simply get the coordinates of M. So M is simply a common midpoint between the diagonal AC and the diagonal BD. Now let's check here. For me to calculate the coordinates of M, I'll start with BD, and that will give me 2 over 2 and 3 over 2, which is just 1 and 3 over 2. Now I'm going to use the coordinates of A and C to find the coordinates of M, and you realize that I will still get the same coordinate, alright, which is simply 1 and 3 over 2. Similarly here, the same thing applies. This is how they love asking it, where we don't have the coordinates of D. For us to find the coordinates of D, you start with the points that you're given. I will first start by calculating the midpoint of AC. Alright, the midpoint of AC in this case will simply be equal to minus 3 plus 3 divided by 2 and minus 2 plus 2 divided by 2, which is just 0. After I've found the midpoint, I know that if I find the midpoint of DB, it should give me 0 and 0. So I will simply say DB, the midpoint of DB will be 5 plus x divided by 2 and 3 plus y divided by 2. But I do know that 5 plus x, 5 plus x divided by 2 is equals to 0, and that y plus 3 divided by 2 should also be equal to 0. Then you just manipulate the formula to solve for x, and you manipulate the formula again to solve for y. So y will simply be minus 3, and I have shown you what your x value should be. What do we do here? Which midpoint are we going to start with? Exactly, you're going to start with the midpoint of AC because you have both end points. And then you can now calculate the midpoint, which is the midpoint M, by using the endpoints B and D. And then you will simply say the midpoint of BD, the x coordinate will be x plus 6 divided by 2, and the y coordinate will be y plus 2 divided by 2. But we know that x plus 6 divided by 2 should give you the x coordinate of the midpoint, which is 1. So I will simply take that and equate it to 1. And then to get rid of this 2 here, I will simply multiply both sides by 2. And I will get x plus 6 is equals to 1 times 2, which is just x is equals to 2 minus 6, which is simply minus 4. We know that y plus 2 divided by 2 should give you negative 1. And then manipulate the formula to solve for y, and y will simply be equal to negative 4. Please try this. Here are the solutions. This is NB, guys. This is very, very important. Make sure you know it in and out.